It's May 2026, we're in the peak of the spring market, yet all the headlines are saying prices are remaining flat. Nothing's changing, and there's actually a big surge of activity from last month in April 2026. But that is not true. Condos in Greater Vancouver dropped about 3% on average, and the detached average price dropped about $50,000 in 1 month. The brief surge in April is totally gone. The market has cooled down. Buyer leverage is widening as we head into early summer. So in this video, we're going to go through a full breakdown of where each property type and region stood at the end of May and what this means for buyers who are watching heading into June, early summer. Let's get into it. So jumping into this article, BC housing market, May 2026, inventory builds, prices soften underneath. So one thing that I found the most interesting in this market update is that headline prices held flat. So there was no change in average sale price, but once we look at the data even deeper, condos dropped down to $700,000 on average, and the detached market, the detached homes in Greater Vancouver, softened to about $2.1 million on average. And I'll show you what they were before. So in Greater Vancouver condos, here we are, 700,000 median, down from 720,000 in April. That's almost a 3% drop. And then detached fell $50,000 in 1 month, from 2.15 down to 2.1 this month. So as I mentioned in the intro, the brief April firming has cooled. So we saw a surge in last month's stats that has totally cooled off, and buyer leverage has widened back out heading into early summer. So heading into the summer, it looks like things are actually chilling out a little bit. One reason why you can't, a headline for granted, because it did say that prices are remaining flat, but here we are seeing one of the two major segments in the market are down month over month. All right, so the first section of this article, Greater Vancouver inventory builds, prices soften in condos and detached. So now when we look at new active listings across Greater Vancouver from April to May, inventory has jumped just over 16,000. This is a 16% jump in inventory from March and represents the highest spring inventory the board has seen in several years. So very clearly the spring activity is here as far as new listings go, but what is happening to the sales and where the buyers are? So median days on market has ticked up slightly, 45 from 44. The main takeaway for buyers is buyers who paused on April's firming, April's surge signals, are walking back into a deeper, slower market. So very good news for buyers. Maybe you saw that you might need to be a little bit urgent last month, but this month is starting to show a different story. So now let's break it down by property type. First, condos. So like we already talked about, the condo segment saw a step down in pricing from 720 on average to 700,000. Inventory grew another 5.5%, and days on market lengthened from 42 days on average to 45. So the key takeaway for first-time homebuyers, this is the clearest opening since March. A much larger share of inventory now falls inside the BC property transfer tax exemption window for purchases under $835,000. So property transfer tax, this is one of the major expenses when it comes to buying a home. For example, on an $800,000 purchase, that is going to be about $14,000 in property transfer tax that you have to pay on closing. If you are a first-time home buyer and your purchase price is under $800,000, you're going to be fully exempt from property transfer tax. So when we look, as the average price of a condo drops, a much larger share of the inventory is going to fall into that exemption range. So this is really good news for first-time home buyers. All right, jumping into townhomes. Townhouses continue to be the most balanced segment in Greater Vancouver. Inventory grew 5.5% month over month, but the median price softened only very slightly from 1.25 to 1.23. And days on market remained the shortest of any major segment at 41 days on market. So townhome buyers should expect competition on well-priced family-sized stock in Burnaby, Coquitlam, and on the North Shore. And this is a very important piece of information here, family-sized stock. So when people are moving up into a townhome, the cream of the crop, the best townhomes are going to be those that are suited for families. So a young family can raise a family in there, grow a family in there. So these are your 3-bed, 3-bath townhomes, 4-bed, 3-bath townhomes with an attached garage, a driveway, maybe a small garden space. You can raise a family from very young age to a very, very old age, save up eventually if you ever want to expand into a detached home, but you have plenty of space, all the essentials with the garage and a bit of a backyard, and you do have some autonomy. This is a home that you can stay in for over 20 years. This is the kind of inventory in townhouse and townhomes that do really well, even in this slow market. Now, for detached homes, we are looking at, we already talked about this, median prices down to 2.1 from 2.15. Detached inventory grew 7.5% in May, the biggest monthly build of any segment, and median price stepped down meaningfully from, I already said, 2.15 to 2.1. So the April story of rising over asking sales in the detached market has not been repeated at the same pace. Sellers who held firm through April are increasingly recutting prices in May. Well-located, well-priced detached still moves. Everything else is accumulating days on market. This is essentially true for everything on the market right now. There is an abundance of inventory. Buyers have so much selection and, fewer sales. Only the best homes at the best prices are the ones that are selling. Anything that is subpar, people are passing on, especially if you're trying to price alongside some of the really nice listings. So if you don't have the best listing, or there are some features in your listing that you don't have, maybe you have 1 bath instead of 2, maybe you have a tandem garage instead of a side-by-side garage, you need to price more competitively. Because in this market, you're probably not going to be able to compete with these better options at a very similar price. So now this article goes into the Fraser Valley inventory. We're just going to quickly go through this. So that is 14% more inventory than at the end of March in the Fraser Valley. This is the deepest the board has been all year inventory wise. So median days on market lengthened from 250 from 46, which is actually quite a bit. That's like an increase in April. The longest of any major BC region tracked here. So that is pretty crazy actually. The longest days on market in any region is going to be in the Fraser Valley. So that's Surrey, Langley, Mission, Abbotsford. And this is a good point here. The Fraser Valley value gap to Greater Vancouver actually widened. So Fraser Valley homes trade at roughly 36% cheaper than Greater Vancouver on a dollar per square foot basis. This is a huge gap, a huge discount to just hop over to the other side of the river. So now jumping quickly into condos. Fraser Valley condos remain one of the only segments in BC where a typical buyer pays 0 property transfer tax under the first-time homebuyer exemption. That's because the median price is quite low, and it's actually dropping. So 520,000 in March, 515,000 in April, and then 510,000 in May 2026. So inventory has climbed steadily. Buyers in this segment have time and selection on their side. So buyers for condos in the Fraser Valley, you are winning. These are some amazing price points. Now for townhomes in the Fraser Valley. We already talked about this. Buyer pays roughly 36% less per square foot than a comparable Greater Vancouver townhome. That's trading at roughly almost $800 per square foot. In the Fraser Valley, you can get it at closer to $500 a square foot. So the median price remarkably stable for the past 3 months. Inventory grew only 5.8% in May, the slowest build on any major segment. So if you're trying to sell a townhome in the Fraser Valley, generally you're doing better than most of the market just because there's not a lot of inventory coming on compared to everything else on the market. So I like this section here. So this goes city by city. So looking at Surrey, first of all, Surrey added roughly 320 net new listings in May, the largest absolute monthly build of any city tracked here. There are a lot more homes in Surrey, but I think by landmass, Surrey is one of the largest municipalities. But this is still extremely impressive. 320 net new listings in 1 month. Inventory growth is concentrated in the condo product around Surrey Central and Wally. And I've seen so many cheap condos, incredible condos for some of the people that bought, because I've seen prices drop even below some of the 2018 to 2021 pricing. I've seen some top 40th bed units selling in the mid 500s. It's pretty crazy. where are we? Which continues to pull the board median down. So the condo inventory in Surrey Central is pulling the average down relative to the townhome heavy areas like Cloverdale and Fleetwood. Now let's look at Burnaby. Burnaby posted the biggest percentage inventory jump of any major city in May, growing 10.9% from April's almost 1,800 listing. So almost 11% jump in inventory is wild. The mid-market story remains intact. SkyTrain access at a meaningful discount to the city of Vancouver, but negotiating dynamic has shifted firmly back towards buyers. So if you're a buyer looking for a home and trying to stay close to Vancouver, Burnaby seems to be the place to be shopping. 11% more inventory means that prices are likely going to be coming back down, and you still maintain all the essentials like SkyTrain access, tons of amenities, tons of malls, and a lot of new construction. Especially if you're looking at the Metrotown and Patterson area in South Burnaby, tons of new product is flooding the market, so you should be able to see some really good price product. North Vancouver. So North Vancouver remains the fastest moving major region by a wide margin. The North Shore continues to be a supply constrained by geography, probably because of the mountains and the rivers and the inlet, and price anchored by consistent lifestyle demand, especially if you're living or trying to live down by like Lower Lonsdale. I live up in the mountains with some privacy and nature. If you are watching this market, properties are not sitting. They are clearing in roughly 2/3 of the time of Greater Vancouver as a whole. So market is moving much faster in North Vancouver. And then lastly, here we have Richmond. The April surge in over asking sales has not carried into May at the same pace, and Richmond is back to being one of the slowest clearing major markets in the region. Buyers have selection and time, particularly in the detached market. Richmond, slow is the bottom line. I have 4 listings in Richmond and they are so quiet. We're doing what we can. We are running ads, making videos, knocking doors, hosting open houses. It is quiet, and hopefully that changes. All right, so this is really good. May trends that are worth tracking. So the headline medians are stable, but when we look into the data, condos and detached pricing is softening. So board-wide stability is masking real price movement in 2 of the largest segments in the Greater Vancouver. Buyers that are shopping for condos or detached in May had measurably more negotiating room than buyers in April. All right, next we have inventories now at multi-year May highs. So a 14.7% build over 3 months. That is a ton of inventory. Fraser Valley grew 23% in inventory, which is wild. New listings are continuing to arrive faster than absorption, which is the opposite of what happened in April. The traditional spring rush did not materialize at the pace sellers had hoped for and disappeared pretty quickly. And we're seeing it across the board. Now, days on market. So you want to be, worth tracking. You want to be tracking days on market. So for condos, it's moved from 42 to 45 days. That's almost 10%. Townhomes from 38 to 41 days. That's just under 10%. And then in Burnaby from 45 to 49. So that's another 10% jump in days on market. North Vancouver is the only one that actually got shorter, so they dropped to 31 days. So the April compression in days on market did not stick. For buyers, this is the clear signal that April's firming was a head fake and the leverage has widened back out. So this is just saying that May is slowing down. April, we saw that pace pick up, but in May, it just totally disappeared. So that's why you need to kind of look at a couple months back to back of steady signals. When things are moving like this, it's hard to tell what's going on until you zoom out and have enough data. So right now we're in the weeds. It's hard to say exactly what's going on, but it's pretty clear from last month. Things are pretty slow. So what does this mean heading into June? May reversed the April story. April looked like the spring inflection point with sales accelerating and over asking sales jumping into detached. May data shows that momentum totally did not carry through. So inventory is continuing to grow. Days on market is lengthening. Most segments are seeing stable pricing, but that's hiding real softness in prices of specific segments. For buyers, the message is really straightforward. The leverage window did not close in April, and right now it's wider than it has been in any point in 2026. So the key thing here for first-time home buyers is to focus on the condo segments in Greater Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. This is where prices have softened and a much larger share of the inventory now falls inside or near the BC property transfer tax exemption. So that is your market update for May 2026. There's a ton of market updates that I'm going to cover this month because things are changing and shifting, and I want to be sure I get all the information to you. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video, maybe another market update. Peace.